Hi everybody, this is Tina from Rehatch Designs. I'm here today with another Tim Holtz Tuesday, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We have 3 pages that we're going to do in our journal that we started. I'm starting out with some Tim Holtz tissue paper, and I'll list all the products in the description box so that you can see exactly what I'm using. Anyway, I'm going to use some Tim Holtz tissue paper, and I have a little water brush that I'm going to go ahead and just kind of randomly rip it so it doesn't look perfect on the page. I had just pulled out one of our pre-made pages that we had, and that's what's so great about using a ring binding, is the fact that you can just take each page out and decorate them as you go. And today we're going to do 3, so I'm going to make it pretty quick. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put this down. In the end, you won't see that much of it, but you'll see a little bit of it. My background is kind of a grayish beige color, so this is going to work well. And I am just going to put this down with some glue stick because we're going to be doing a lot of stuff on top of it, and I really don't want to wait for it to dry, and my glue stick holds it down pretty good. So I put a lot of glue stick down, and then I rub it down and get any little edges that I didn't get. And even if the edges come up, it won't be bad. It'll look okay. So after I get all of that down, my next step is to decide what I want to do. And I have 2 different things that I'm going to use on this. This is the new Tim Holtz Chapter 3 collection, and it is an embossing folder, and I will list that below. And here is another one. I think it's called Typeset, and I'm going to use that. And I've already kind of put a little bit of a distress glaze on top of the Typeset, but I haven't done anything to the black one. So I'm just trying to decide where I want it. I don't know 100% what I'm doing, so this is just kind of me ad-libbing. So I'm tearing off some pieces. I don't want them to be on there perfectly. I'm kind of leaving the corners square because I would end up having to cut those anyway. So anyway, I cut off the edges. And now I'm just going to go ahead and figure out how much of the typeset I want to put in there and which way I want it to be, etc. So I'm tearing my paper, and I'm doing it so that the white doesn't show. I want kind of a random look. And I decide I'm going to go ahead and cut this because I want part of the whole letters to show. And I'm not really spelling anything, I'm just putting numbers and letters together. Anyway, so I guess I'll figure out as I'm doing this exactly where I want it. And there really is no certain rhyme or reason for it. I'm just putting it where I think it looks good. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm trying to decide what other things I'm going to use. And then I decide I'm going to go ahead and I have some paste wax that's kind of a metallic gray, and I'm going to go over the white with that. And I'm going to be doing more things to this later, so this is just kind of like a first step. But I do want the numbers to show up. And there's actually a texture in there too, not just the numbers. So when you do get it on there, and I'm putting a little bit of it on the typeset also, just because I want a little less black on there. So now I'm going to glue down my pieces. And this may change as I go, because I mean, I'm not, definitely doing anything with anything in mind. I'm just kind of winging it as I go. The important thing is when you're doing this, have fun with it. And as I said, what's really great about the ring binding is that you can take pages in and out. And we used mainly Tim Holtz paper and other type of paper similar. So the really good thing is it gives you a good base to start with. And I had already sewn all the way around these, so that's already done. So you're going to have that texture in there also. So I kind of changed the way that I'm going to put these in there. And then I decide, okay, that's it. I'm not going to move around with it anymore. I'm going to go ahead and glue them down. And I really love doing stuff like this because it's easy, but it's, you know, it gives you some artistic freedom. You can add things to it and it doesn't take a lot of time. And you know, you could do a page a day or something and just have fun with it. So now I'm trying to decide what else I want to add to it. And then I decided I got these new stencils, and this is also his chapter 3. And I'm trying to decide what number, and I just finally just decide I'm going to do the number 3. Now these numbers are like kind of long, and that's why I got them, because I thought that I don't have any like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. And I am using his texture Crackle paste. And I really love this stuff. I'm looking for a very rustic look, so I don't care that it goes on there perfectly. And of course it doesn't, but that's fine, because this is going to crack and we're going to add a lot of other things to it. So, okay, so I have a lot left over on my little spatula thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put some all the way around the edges. And I love doing this because it kind of brings it all together. And this will eventually crack and look really distressed. Plus it kind of blends everything together that you've already done, I think. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do more. I have this Tim Holtz stencil, and I'm going to just do the little honeycomb part of it. I like buying these collections because I usually only use a very small portion of a stencil. I don't use very many times a big portion of it. So I'm just going to put a little of this texture down, and I'm overlapping on some of my other elements because I want it to look like, you know, it's all in after on top of it, which it is, but I want to make sure I get some on the other portions. And I didn't do a great job of it, but that's okay. The fact that it's a little messy is fine with me. Now, I usually let this kind of just dry on its own if I'm not recording or something, or I need to get it done. So in any case, I will dry this, but if you do dry it, you have to try not to get too close to it because it will bubble. Anyway, I went ahead and dried it with my heat gun, and you can see a couple parts there yellowed a little bit, but that's okay because I'm going to be doing some more to it later, and that won't really matter. Okay, I have 3 acetate butterflies that I had printed from a digital, and I'm going to use those. I cut them out, and I'm getting ready to put them on. And now what I'm going to do is I'm putting a little bit more of the silver on the numbers because I think they need to pop a little bit more. And now I'm going to use some distress spray. I think this is walnut spray, and I'm adding some water to it. And so what I'm going to do now is I don't like the stark white of the texture paste, so I'm going to put some of this brown in. And don't worry, it's not going to stay that brown. It will get more of a kind of a beige, but I wanted a darker color to get into all the cracks. And I don't know if you can really tell, but the texture paste, because it's a crackle, it's getting in more than just the grooves, it's getting in all the little cracks. So if you don't put something on top of it, you really can't see all the little cracks. So that was my point. I'm doing that all over. I'm doing it on the 3, and I don't care if it gets in other places because I want it all to kind of eventually all blend. So I'm going to go all the way around with this diluted walnut, and then I'm going to go take my wipe, and I'm just going to take a lot of it off the top. And after I make sure I have enough in there, I'm taking some of the loose, and I'm just flicking my brush just to get some more of the brown just kind of all over. I don't want it just on those spots. So now I'm taking my butterflies that I had fussy cut out and deciding where I want them, and I just glued them down, and I put some words in the middle of it. And that's pretty much it. I decided to do one more thing. I just took some white gesso and I mixed it with water, and I already had some of the walnut stain still down there, so it's not super white. It kind of blends, but I wanted to put a few white specks, and I mainly did that because I want the butterflies to stand out, but I also want them to look like it's part of the composition and kind of get it all to blend it all together. Got a little bit too much there, and I took it off. And then the last thing I do is I just took a marker and went across and put some antennas on the butterflies, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and try. I'm going as fast as I can, guys. My video wasn't recording for a while, so I already had stamped a little, but I'm going to still show you what I did. So I used these chapter 3 new words, and then this is another stencil I had. And what I'm going to do is I put this on my ink tool, and I find it's easier to do it this way because that way I can kind of see where I want everything, and I can go down again. This one's a We Are Memory Keepers, but there's lots of different ones out there. I find this one really easy to use, and it's pretty inexpensive. So I put my words down first, and they were already down there earlier, but I'm just showing you what I did. And I just used black ink. Okay, and now what I'm doing is I'm going over them with some a dabber. Basically, it's just Versamark, but this is Distress Embossing Dabber. And so I'm going to go over the black ink with an embossing dabber. And the reason I can do that is because I have it on a stamping platform, and what it does is I can go back over things. So I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to go over it with the ink first, and I'm just using Archival Ink Black Soot. And I have some flowers. I almost did it upside down, guys. Anyway, so I'm going to do these black flowers, and then I'm going to wipe these off, and I'm going to do the same thing again with my dabber. I'm going to go over it, and I'm going to go ahead and put, you can do that or Versamark or whatever it is you want to put on there. You could go ahead and just put the embossing on top of the ink, but I find it works better if you use the embossing dabber or Versamark or something. Okay, so I'm going to get all the other little extra specks, but I don't really care if there's too many. And then we're going to emboss these. After they're embossed, I'm going to go ahead and use some distress crayons. And you could use watercolors or anything like that you want to use. And I just took out some paint brushes that I'm going to use and a little bit of water. And what I'm going to do is I am just going to barely color this, and I'm actually not trying to color very well. I'm just trying to put some of the color down next to the spots where I want it to be. You kind of want this to be a little messy. You don't want it to be perfect. And so then I take my water and I'm just basically smearing and activating the Distress crayon, and you'll see that I'm going outside the lines a little bit, and that's, kind of sort of intentional. You're trying to make it look like it's just a little watercolor, a little blurry, and the Distress crayons are really good for that because you can just put a little bit of color down. And then I'm going to just take the green and do all the green all around all of my 3 flowers and do the same thing. And this dries fairly quickly. And I think that the reason I like using a Distress crayon, you can put a lot of pigment down. It's a little easier than using watercolor. Now I'm taking my pink and I'm going to color my flower, and again I'm doing it very, very loosely. I'm just basically putting color down so that I can smear it around a little bit and get it where I need it. Again, I'm just going to take my water and just kind of smear it around. This is really fun and enjoyable, and the embossing, when you do this, you could do it just with ink. But the cool thing about the embossing is when you get all done and it's dry, you just wipe it off on the top because some of the color may get on top, and you can really see the black. It really pops out. So I'm doing my orange. And you can do this with any stamps. It doesn't matter what kind. These particular stamps, I think, work well because it's a very loose design. And I think a looser design type stamp, it just really lends itself to this kind of a look. I love it. Okay, so now I'm going to do my last page, and this is not actually Tim Holtz paper, but I thought I'd put this in our book because I liked it, the stress. And now I'm going to use some stickers that I got from the dollar store. You could use any stickers, any kind. It doesn't have to be, these type, but these are a little dimensional, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to use them. And they already have a brown on it. So I'm putting, basically just dabbing around it with my embossing dabber. And I'm just kind of doing a very random look around the edges of this paper. And I used 3 different embossing glazes. And I think it was Vintage Photo and Rusty Hinge and Walnut Stain. And I used them in different parts, and I'm really trying to make things look a little bit more rusty and vintage. And the thing about these embossing glazes is that you can see through them. So you'll be able to see all of the detail on these stickers, but it's going to give them a different look. It's going to make them look a little bit more kind of rustic. It's going to have a little more brownish look to it because you'll be able to see through the colors that I put on. And I'm basically just putting 3 different colors on at 3 different times, and I'm just adding the walnut stain last in a few spots. Now, if your colors mix when you do this, I have a special little container that I put them in, but usually the first one you put on there, you can definitely just put them back. Anyway, after I do that, I just emboss them. Be very careful because these are plastic and you don't want to get too close, but they get just fine if you stay far enough away and they still embossed. Now I'm doing my edges that I had done previously, and there's 3 different colors in there, so that gives it that look. And now I've got some vintage sheet music, and it's kind of a smaller print, and I like that for a small page. And what I'm doing is I'm just tearing pieces that I'm going to put all behind my little music instruments and my little Victrola. I think that's what my grandmother used to call them. And that's just to kind of highlight them. And I'm just going to ink around it with some walnut stain. So it looks a little bit more vintage, since that's the look. Now I'm going to glue them all down where I want them. And then I'm going to get my stamp. And this time I'm just going to do the Versamark on here and get it nice and wet. Get that right where I want it. And make sure I let it sit there for a few seconds so it seeps in. Now I'm going to put my other stamp on that I want to put on there. And really, actually, I should have done one and then dusted the stuff off and then the other, because then it got on the sticker. But it wasn't hard to fix. So now I'm going to just put my black. Now this is very fine. When you're doing words and fine detail, like I did with the flowers, you need to have a very fine embossing. Anyway, that's it, guys. There's everything all done. And I hope you like that. And so we have 3 pages for our journal. Thanks. See you again next time.